resource allocation for that is really tricky. And really, I call it the shiny new object problem. It looks fantastic. Everybody wants to be part of it. Everybody's got an opinion on it, but it doesn't pay the bills because the existing product marketer, well, they've got a product to look after as is. That's time, that's effort, that's investment. Somebody has to do that. If they don't spend time on that and they focus on a zero revenue product, well, that's a problem.
You are listening to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. In this episode, Axel Kirstetter, the Vice President of Product Marketing at Datasite, shares his experience in evolving from single product to multi-product. Let's dive into it right now. Today, we're happy to have Axel Kirstetter to be our podcast guest. Axel is an experienced product marketer. Currently, he's the Vice President of Product Marketing at Datasite, a merge and acquisition lifecycle software provider. Welcome to the talk, Axel.
Thank you. So great to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with the Product Marketing Hive.
Thank you. So let's start it with your product marketing journey. How did you get into product marketing?
Yes, my product marketing journey started, about 15 years ago or so. I think the domain is relatively new. The activities have been around for some time, and really came into it via my initial work in the subscription space, where the product management team was a little bit unsure of how to take a product to market from a pricing perspective. They didn't know how to commercialize it, and quickly that turned out it wasn't so much a product problem. It was really the lack of a product marketing capability. So that was with a company called Teleatlas, which ended up getting acquired by someone else many, many years ago. And ever since then, I've sort of worked for a variety of startups and or sort of grown-up type of companies, focusing my specialty sort of 500 to 5,000 employees and the respective revenue amount that comes with that.
Yeah, that's great. So you have had experience in your company, the Datasite, growing from one product to multiple product offerings.
Correct.
Can you share a little bit more background story with our audience? Like, what was the situation like? Why did you decide to add more offerings?
Absolutely. So with Datasite, which is, like you said, M&A lifecycle provider,
yeah.
It really emerged out of what's called the virtual data room space. So within the M&A community, there is a specific point in time where you look at another company, you conduct due diligence. There are many providers who provide software for that. And it's very much deal dependent on how many deals out there in the market is sort of the core value metric that's associated with it. And so for us, it became a natural point of, we keep growing geographical footprint, geographical diversification, more industry focus, and. But at some point, you get to a natural amount of saturation or growth limitations. In our case, we had an ongoing innovation around features for our core product offering, and that's on an ongoing basis. And we realized that as a first step to keep growing, when you have a sort of 150 million plus revenue opportunity, well, you have to enable your platform, your technology stack to be readied for scalable growth. So the first step was really to change from a sort of monolithic technology infrastructure to a modern microservices architecture, multi-tenancy that would enable at some point any type of application to be run on top of it. And then the question is, what is an application? Is it a feature of something existing? How is it sort of put together? But basically, that's when the foundations of a new product potential were being established. And but at some point, from a product marketing perspective, what I always like to do is conduct value chain analysis. And basically meaning you look at the various stages in the value chain, more or less, you have an upstream element and you have a downstream element, or it can be circular in terms of a life cycle. And what core activities do people do across that value chain? And as you then analyze that, there's usually different players. Quite often a simple example would be a data provider and then a software provider. So data is an injection element and the software does something with that data. Well, you might be only the software provider. At some point, you're thinking, well, maybe I should have a data product as well. Could be via partnerships, could be via acquisition, or you could build something for yourself. And obviously, the business decision as to what you're going to do depends very much upon what's the addressable market size, what's the business case like, and of course, you got to talk to your clients in terms of what are they willing to do with you in terms of how are they willing to continue their customer journey with you. So client discovery throughout this process is also very critical. Organically, we had to do something. Inorganically, there was desire to do something. And at some point, very quickly, it became obvious that, here's an opportunity, put a number behind it. You can do your research internally. You can work with external providers as well to help you identify how big some of these market opportunities are. And next thing you know, you have at least 2 products on your hands. It's not quite a portfolio yet, but two distinct products.
Yeah, great. I remember our founder, Crispin Reed, he said product, it's an arbitrary line you draw around some intellectual properties, then you call it product. How did you distinguish exactly between, what is a product and what is a feature?
Great question. I think a feature adds value to a product, whereas a product provides standalone value. I have a heavy pricing background, so I always bring it back in terms of what do users, clients value. And there has to be a standalone value for something to be a standalone product, so to speak. So for example, when you think of Uber, started up with the ride-sharing capabilities, and then they added, features onto that, ride-sharing capabilities, pick me up here, drop me off there, and then they added features around that, with pay for it this way, pay for it that way. But at some point, you started thinking about, well, I could carry passengers or I could carry food that way. Next thing you know, from there you had, Uber Eats that sort of came about. But Uber Eats has nothing to do with the ride sharing. It utilizes sort of the same infrastructure and the same approach, but it has a standalone different value. And as a client, sure, I sometimes use Uber Eats, but I also use Uber the cab sharing. It's sort of more of a one client, 2 ways to engage with me. But the eating part has nothing to do with the taxiing part.
I actually kept seeing it. A lot of people, they call those features products. So when you go to their website, go to the product section, there's 20 things on it, but actually each individual one should be a feature, belong to a product. So a lot of people could, run into the problems that mistakenly think features could be a product.
Yeah, and one of the other sort of tests I have is when you turn it into a brand proposition and really try to package things up, a product to me needs to provide a solution to a problem, and a distinct solution to a problem. And unless, from a sort of brand perspective, you can say, it's the solution to X, and you can research a lot of this now with some of the sort of SEO sophistication that exists out there in terms of what people are searching for, then maybe it's not a standalone offering or it's not big enough to be a standalone offering. Whereas if the core positioning doesn't change because you added a feature, well, then it just remains a feature as opposed to a new solution to a new problem.
Yeah, that's a good approach. So what does the suite of your company look like right now?
Yes. Yeah, so in our space, you divide things more or less in 3 phases. You have pre-due diligence, due diligence, and post-due diligence. And so the core of the market is all around that due diligence. That's the peak of the value when companies check out one another to see what their revenues are like, what the value of the underlying asset is like. We've decided to move upstream. So we've developed more capabilities in the pre-due diligence frame, mostly because the thinking was, what can we do to capture more of the usage and of the demand earlier on in order to make it easier to then capture the due diligence stage, a sort of cash cow that we have of the virtual data room product. One of the unique things is also in our case, there's sort of 2 perspectives. There's a buy side and a sell side in M&A. So there's someone who's wanting to buy a company, another one that's willing to sell the company, and they both have slightly different perspectives. But so we've decided for both to strengthen the pre-due diligence phase, and then for both buy side and the sell side. There's a little bit of complexity with it in terms of, no, this is for the buyer, this is for the seller, and you take it down to the appropriate path. We looked at what is billable, what is free, and you sort of go through all of these choices. And we're working on more now. We're looking at that post diligence as well. But I might be giving away too many secrets here, so let's close out that subject.
Yeah. So, as a product marketer, what are the challenges you had during the evolution from single product to multiple products?
Yeah, it's really a fascinating question. I think a lot of product marketers are just used to having a responsibility for a single product where you sort of go through what are my feature releases, quarterly, monthly, whatever ends up being, building a story around that. And as you move to the sort of multiple products, well, you still have features that get released on an ongoing basis for the existing product. But now you also have a prioritized list of features for the new product that gets released. And suddenly they are not complementary anymore. So one product line could be doing something around, hey, here's an analytics upgrade and change. The other one can talk about doing something around a workflow change and upgrade or whatever it is. And what is now the story that sort of brings those two together from a communication outbound perspective is really quite challenging. And so you can doing the release lists of, hey, this month we released and here's a video, watch it go, which is sort of the tick box. But really, what you need to do is more think of category creation and elevating your story from a product story to a brand story. And this is quite challenging to do because again, that sort of requires a bit of an establishment of a new communication platform. And in a matter of practice or practical challenges I came across is, first of all, before you have a product that you can launch, what have you, there's the building and ideation phase and all that sort of pre-launch that comes in. And resource allocation for that is really tricky because the existing product marketer, well, they've got a product to look after as is, which has its growth figures, 25% year on year. So that's time, that's effort, that's investment. Somebody has to do that. If they don't spend time on that and they focus on a zero revenue product, well, that's a problem. So who is going to be focused on that? And really, I call it the shiny new object problem. It looks fantastic. Everybody wants to be part of it. Everybody's got an opinion on it, but it doesn't pay the bills. And this happens at all the sort of, I think of 5, product release launch stages: planning of a product, aligning the team to make sure that the business case is agreed upon, etc. Building it, which is, you discover things as you start building it, launching it, and then obviously optimizing as you go down the line. And I think as a manager of product marketers, there's also the additional challenge of how do you now organize your team when you have single product, but heavy features. You might have sort of a product marketer per feature. At some point, this becomes a little bit complicated. You might have now 2 product marketers per product. You might have a sort of audience approach. Various other options exist as well, but you got to think through, how do you then organize it? And then from that also, when you have a team, well, you do still have to transfer the knowledge amongst the team members. So if one person is focused on the existing cash cow product and the other person is focused on the new offering, well, they're probably going after the same buyer. They still need to talk. And so that knowledge transfer is an additional element. Speaking of resource allocation, it's not just within product marketing. I've also seen it with the sales organization. Who sells it? What do they get for it? One thing that keeps coming up is how do you train someone for a new product? Because training from a sales perspective means you're spending time internally, which is not time spent in the field, which again has a revenue impact. So you do have to also bear in mind whether this is going to be standalone sales enablement exercise done ideally in conjunction with sort of ongoing annual kickoff sessions or what have you. But these sort of resource allocation challenges keep coming up. If I can just touch on 2 other ones as well, which I've seen, and there's tons more, but we briefly talked about already the naming of a new product, or where does it sit within the portfolio situation. Is it a product? Is it a feature? You got to think about your very practical things. How do you call it? Is it existing product equals the new platform? Is it two new product names. What's the logic behind the names? From there, you also have sort of how do you now construct your collateral? Does collateral website navigation, does one offering lead to the other? Do you keep them separate? All of these things need to be sort of thought about as well. Monetization, pricing. This is always, on the alignment phase, causes a lot of challenges. What is it supposed to do? Is it a loss leader? Meaning you give it away for free because once they're hooked, they get to know your service, they get to know your interface. Whatever comes after, they're going to be buying naturally. Now, that's a great strategy, but with that then comes the problem that, how much cost do you associate with something that doesn't make any money? Or do you want to have standalone revenues, which is also very fair game, which means, now suddenly you're looking at not just one acquisition, but two acquisition processes. So the monetization exercise is a very interesting one as well, especially at the alignment phase.
So how did you approach pricing strategy when you actually now have multiple products to manage, where, it's actually different from a single product?
Yeah, so great question, because that's pricing is quite often where the rubber hits the road. And I think in most cases you usually start off by essentially treating it as if it were a standalone net new product, and you try to work out how do people value it. So you'd go through. I mean, this is the sort of exercise that I'd be going through. What is the offering? You provide a description, wireframes, some kind of design. You interview people off the back of that, doing some qualitative research, usually 6 to 10, provides you with a good overview as to how people value it. It will provide also anchor reference points. It's like X, Y, Z from a competitive perspective or substitute perspective usually. So it provides you a good frame of reference how people think about it. And then you take that into a quantitative research framework. Two things you have to do: really segment your audience. The market is car buyers. That's sort of the market definition, and segment would be women, young people, blue collared, and all the sort of segments that exist behind it. And they value things differently. The mother segment, for example, is always very price sensitive to security features, whatever those security features are. But accordingly, they have a different perception of what value is. Younger people love their sports style vehicles. So hence, you can introduce a different level of price sensitivity. You obviously have to make this work also with all of the operational systems that you have. So if you go through this exercise, you then have your SKU, your stock keeping unit, your metric. That sort of is the core of what you need to do, and off the back of that, you can build out your systems. You have to think about what does the proposal look like, what does the statement of work look like, and what does the bill look like. If you have those things in place, you can sell the stuff. And it doesn't matter whether it's systematized or manual, but that allows you to be ready. So much for sort of the single product. And then as you take it to a portfolio level, well, the obvious question comes up: I've got a client, they buy product A from me because they trust me, they want to buy product B as well. But they don't want to sign two separate contracts. What can you do? So you try to figure out how can you ram those into a single statement of work, which forces you to think through sort of revenue recognition issues. The next thing you have a single statement of work, and sort of a portfolio of offerings. And what I suggest to do for that specifically is when you have things diametrically opposed in terms of this product is valued at X, another product is valued at Y, you can do these shenanigans of, if you pay me 100% on product A, I will discount product B by whatever, 50%. Well, maybe that's not the objectives of what product B had. And so overall, it means, you get sort of 25% discount. But if you do an exercise of doing some good conjoint analysis, allowing you to work out how do clients trade off features A, B, and really talking products, here's a product A versus product B, and you got to go a little bit into the various distinctions, then you can work out how you can best present this on a to-be statement of work or a proposal. And obviously, over time, you have the value added information of how do people use it, what's the purchasing data, which then allows you again to fine tune, over the course of months and quarters, where the real sort of price sensitivity not the research, but the purchase sensitivity lies at to continuously optimize and enhance the offering.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Those are very, very practical tips. What's the consideration for weighing between marketing the suite versus the individual products?
Yeah, I think you sort of have three options to think about. One, do you market the suite of products? So you focus really on the suite. A little bit like Salesforce, is just a sales cloud, even though underneath that, I mean, they have multiple product portfolios. But if I just focus on the sales cloud product portfolio, they have multiple capabilities within that. Or you choose to market the products individually, which is also a very, very popular model. So where you have a general manager per product line, which is also, by the way, a nice career track for a product marketer. Or the other option is you market the brand. So you kind of ignore the fact that it's different suites, and you just focus on the leading brand that represents it all, which is sort of a nice way to go around some of the possible product non-complementary aspects. And really the choices come down to what's the balance between revenue and cost drivers, and what's the balance between your product and your brand story. So that change of product story, feature, functions, of this to that is all good and great, but do you have a brand story that is sufficiently powerful to give you that lift from products to brand? That's really tricky to do, and it requires a cross sort of company-wide effort to get it up there.
You had experience building your product marketing teams from scratch a few times, right? So in terms of hiring the product marketers, some people prefer subject matter experts, or some people prefer hiring just somebody probably not good at this domain, but very good at product marketing. So what's your opinions on this?
Great question. So there's a couple of answers. First of all, I don't believe there's a standard recipe of do this, do that. I think you need to look a little bit inside the company in terms of what the current landscape of intellectual property is like, of human capital. And I always think more of not so much the technical skills of I need 1, 2, 3. When you're starting a team, yes, that is important. So I need someone who does focus specifically industry expertise, for example. But as you have sort of, I don't know what the right number is, more than sort of 5 people, my thinking changes a bit from the technical skills to a balance within the team, where the knowledge sharing and the sort of collaboration and is more beneficial in terms of achieving an output versus the exact technical skill of expert at competitive intelligence or expert at the product side. And you benefit more from having a team that works well together. And I have made compromises on a person having sort of some weaknesses, technical weaknesses in certain areas, but I can see them working really well with the rest of the team, including asking people what their MBTIs are, just to get a sense for whether it's a good complementary match. As I grow, I value that much more so than technical knowledge. Also, you got to consider that you also have to hire externally, you can also hire internally, and usually people then bring some kind of expertise to the table about the company, the processes, the culture, what have you. And you can always teach them, what they need to know technically. I think if all you do is ever hire technical skills, then how does a person acquire those technical skills in the first place? There also needs to be an opportunity to learn on the job or knowledge share on the job.
Yeah, great tips. We're getting to the end of our time here. Do you have any final thoughts on the topic, the multi-product product marketing?
I think for a product marketer who's only ever worked on a single product, it's a logical next step in their career. And if someone is concerned about stuck only on a single product and sort of keep doing the same thing, see if they can own more of that sort of portfolio element. And again, could be organic, could be inorganic, but it's kind of a nice, exciting way to continue one's journey, career, and education within the product marketing realm.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for joining our show today. Thank you, Axel.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. Check out our website, productmarketinghive.com, to join our community, meet fellow product marketers, and access free resources, including training, playbooks, templates, and events. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe and give a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. See you next time.